in a capital-intensive industry. The vision of digitally empowered Filipinos in our C-Suite vision.
Bawal muna ang pakikipag-usap sa loob ng mga tren ng MRT. Some residents are back on the streets of Sampaloc, Manila after the 48-hour lockdown. Pagtaas ng mga kaso ng COVID-19 dito sa bansa. Naglagay na ng mga improvised barriers para sa mga nagbibisikleta. Typhoon Ulysses, a super typhoon. Christy Matulak, CNN Philippines.
So many questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here?
How concerned are you about the front line?
You don't believe that there's a racial divide here?
Looking back, as president, did you tell the story of race in America enough, do you think?
All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're part of what I do right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, Tuesday through Saturday only on CNN.
We're back.
Hell yeah!
I take it very, very seriously.
This week on Hollywood Express. F9 is already a record breaker.
It's very humbling to watch them and be able to take advice from them.
A magical reunion is in the works.
This is Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. I'm Pia Ontiveros. Tonight on the program, President-elect Bongbong Marcos' team meets with Public Works and National Museum officials to discuss Inauguration Day as police ramp up security measures. Amid calls to make face masks optional outdoors, the country records the first cases of yet another Omicron subvariant, BA.5. And the Boston Celtics draw first blood in Game 1 of the NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors. Police are beefing up security ahead of President-elect Bongbong Marcos' inauguration at the end of the month, which is why the National Museum of Fine Arts is closing its doors to the public beginning next week. Our Tristan Odalo reports.
The camp of President-elect Bongbong Marcos has yet to disclose more details on his inauguration, which will take place at the National Museum of Fine Arts on June 30th. What we know so far is that the Marcos team has met with the Public Works Department and museum officials on Friday to discuss inauguration scenarios. But in terms of a number of guests, invited VIPs, menu, program flow, theme, and stage design, much of these details are not yet available. The Marcos camp is keeping the tradition. Supreme Court Chief Justice Alexander Gesmundo will administer the oath to the President-elect. Gesmundo says he has yet to receive a formal invitation.
There are no invitation as of right now, or very little information. Of course, the people who have to be there are already informed that they will have to be there.
The National Museum says it is honored to host the oath-taking of the country's 17th president. The Museum of Fine Arts will be temporarily closed from June 6 to July 4th. Now that there's a venue, the Philippine National Police are also beefing up security measures.
Nag-create na rin po ng task force ang PNP sa pangunguna po ng ating OIC at meron po tayong Security Task Group Manila at Security Task Group Davao na siyang mangunguna po sa paglalatag po ng seguridad. Sa ngayon ma'am, wala po tayong nare-receive na any serious threat dito po sa Manila at pa rin po dun sa Davao.
Protests will also be allowed, but groups should secure permits first. The National Museum of Fine Arts is also known as the Old Legislative Building, which is also a sentimental favorite of the incoming president. 3 former presidents also took their oaths here: Manuel Quezon, Josepi Laurel and Manuel Rojas respectively. Tristan Nodalo, CNN Philippines.
The PNP adds beyond securing the area against possible threats and protests, it will also manage traffic on nearby roads. Now on to transition talks. Vice President Leni Robredo meets the transition team of Vice President-elect Sara Duterte. The Davao City Mayor's team visited Robredo's offices in Quezon City earlier today. Robredo told the group she's ready to offer assistance and guidance for a smooth transition. Officials from the Office of the Vice President gave Mayor Duterte's team a tour of the reception house where Robredo's office is located, as well as Ben Hor Building, which houses the OVP's administrative units. The visit comes after the transition teams of the outgoing and incoming vice presidents met virtually on Wednesday. Now, as the 18th Congress comes to a close, what life awaits 8 senators whose terms end on June 30th? Amor Santos has that story.
Veteran lawmaker Franklin Drilon brought colleagues to tears as he bid goodbye to the institution he has served for more than 2 decades.
There is a time for everything. A time to work and a time to rest. And after being in public life for more than 35 years, I am stepping back to my private space.
Still, Drilon offers his expertise whenever he could be of help. Senate President Tito Soto is going back to his first love. He tells CNN Philippines he's putting back up his recording studio. Soto shared an artist and a politician do have some common ground.
Both of them must be able to discern the tempo of the times. Both must know the pulse of the people. And finally, both the musician and the politician must understand that their work becomes meaningful only when it redounds to the common good.
From National Police Chief to lawmaker, Senator Ping Lacson also caps off 5 decades of public service.
Yes, I'm finally going home and allow the evolution of our country's long line of legislators to take its course.
On social media, a glimpse of Lacson's civilian life. He asked fellow outgoing Senator Kiko Pangilinan about farming peppercorns. After advocating for farmers' rights, Pangilinan now has more time for groundwork. Also, no rest for Senator Richard Gordon, who will continue to lead the Philippine Red Cross, and Senator Manny Pacquiao, who says with or without a government post, he will not stop helping the poor. It's see you again for Senator Ralph Recto, who will return to Congress as Batangas representative.
See you all in BICAM.
Meanwhile, there appears to be light at the end of the tunnel for detained Senator Laila De Lima. As former accusers changed their tune, calls for her release grew louder.
Mr. President-elect, free Laila.
Praises poured in for the graduating senators. Colleagues say the Senate will never be the same, but the legislative work must go on. Amos Santos, CNN Philippines.
Senator-elect J.V. Ejercito is seeking a dialogue with President Rodrigo Duterte to suspend the premium hike of state insurer PhilHealth. Ejercito says PhilHealth should hold off raising the contribution rate from 3 to 4% amid the pandemic. The premium hike took effect on June 1st as required by the Universal Healthcare Law, which Ejercito authored in 2019.
You must remember that when the law was being crafted and drafted, it was normal times, no? It was pre-pandemic. I had the chance already last week to talk to BBM, and personally we discussed about the Universal Healthcare Law on how it can move forward.
The president previously ordered to postpone the increase for a year and a half to help Filipinos cope with the pandemic. Now, a possible increase in jeepney fares is not yet off the table. Authorities are set to hear the petition for a 15 peso minimum fare this month. George Quiles has that and other transport-related stories.
Jeepney driver Eduardo Seraste says he works 16 hours per day to bring home at least 500 pesos. With the increasing fuel prices, Seraste says it's really hard to get by.
Kulang na kulang talagang kita namin. Lalo kung masira ang panjip, wala na.
The Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board is yet to act on pending request to increase the minimum jeepney fare from 9 to 15 pesos. But Serase points out, fare hike is not the solution.
Kasi kung tataas naman pamasahe natin, wala naman sasakay, kaunti ang sasakay. Ang dapat, kung taasan kami, ang pamasahe, taasan dapat ang sweldo ng mga tao.
LTFRB Chairman Martin Delgra says the government is continuing to find ways to help both the public transport sector and the commuters with the surging oil prices.
Naglagay po tayo ng mga programa kung saan ang gobyerno mismo nagbibigay ng pondo na kung may pagtaas ng presyo sa krudo, hindi kaagad-agad ang kasagutan doon, itataas yung pamasahe.
The libreng sakay on the EDSA busway and other routes all over the country will continue until the end of the year or until they use up the 7 billion peso budget allotted for it. The LTFRB also continues the distribution of 6,500 peso fuel subsidy to PUV drivers. The agency reports over 160,000 drivers have already received the cash aid, hoping to reach 260,000 next week. But tricycle drivers need to wait a little longer because the Interior Department has yet to submit the list of possible beneficiaries. CNN Philippines tried to ask the DILG's explanation, but they have yet to respond to our queries.
We will upload it in our website for everybody to know kung sino yung nakatanggap. We have press land bank na yung mga pending na mga submissions namin, no, would already be resolved para ma-credit na rin yung mga yung amounts sa fuel subsidy.
Meanwhile, ride-sharing app Grab will give free shuttle service to commuters from the airport to any point in Metro Manila. It says just go to the Grab booth at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport, Terminals 2 and 3. That's from June 15 to 30 from 8 to 11 p.m. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Coming up, yet another Omicron subvariant has been detected in the country. The two cases have no travel history. And Russia's war in Ukraine now hitting closer to home with the price of bread about to rise. Details right here on CNN Philippines.
Conquering the universe was the ultimate, but there's more. Dahil tinawag ko ako ng Panginoon for a major purpose. To guide the youth, help communities, and to bring others closer to Him. Kaya I take care of my health through proper diet, exercise, and MX3 capsule. I am ready to serve. Kasi para sa Panginoon, hindi lang ako fourth runner-up. First place ako sa puso niya.
Mahalagang paalala, ang MX3 capsule ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamiting panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
Fried chicken? Timplang happy. Tocino? Timplang magandang gising. Inasal? Ito, medyo timplang umuusok. Galit-galitan. Spicy? Timplang hot na hot. With easy-to-cook Magnolia Chicken Timplados. Iba't ibang sarap ng chicken, kaya. Ikaw, anong Magnolia Chicken Timplados mo? Iba't ibang easy chicken sarap.
Land Bank has always believed that in this country, we have to dream big. And so we learned to build something out of nothing, improving the quality of life for our people so that we can keep in step with a brave new world and make our big dreams come true.
You're watching CNN Philippines. The country reports its first two cases of another highly transmissible Omicron subvariant, BA.5. Both patients are from Central Luzon and from the same household. They first exhibited symptoms on May 15th and have since recovered. One of their two household members have also contracted COVID-19. Both are in isolation.
Unknown ang naging exposure ng mga ito dahil maliban sa pagpunta sa election precincts at opisina nila dito sa National Capital Region, wala pong travel history ang dalawang individual. Matapos makaramdam ng pag-ubo at sipon, agarang nag-isolate ang mga individual.
With the rising subvariant cases, the health department says it is not yet time to lift the public health emergency or allow optional wearing of face masks outdoors. Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion made the suggestions after the country was placed on the lowest traveler risk status. The DOH points out the continuing challenges in vaccination and how lifting the emergency could affect the overall pandemic response.
Lifting of the state of calamity is being discussed. So marami tayong kailangan i-prepare before we can readily do this. Sa ngayon po, because of the influx of these new subvariants, because of the challenge for our government to have this increased uptake for boosters. Mababa ang uptake ng boosters, ibig sabihin nito, ang immunity ng populasyon ay medyo bumababa.
Magkakaproblema rin tayo if bigla natin tanggalin yan kasi mababawasan na yung vaccine supply natin. Hindi pa nga fully approved itong mga vaccines na to. It may really mess up our plans if hindi po natin ma-anticipate yung mga problems before just removing all these restrictions po.
The DOH also stressed the importance of wearing masks amid eased restrictions. Now, in the United States, younger children may start rolling up their sleeves for COVID-19 shots later this month. Officials say the rollout for those 6 months to 5 years old could begin as early as June 21st. Vaccine advisors still have to review data on Pfizer and Moderna doses. Both manufacturers have applied for emergency use authorization for the age group. Over to the United Kingdom, the Duke of York, Prince Andrew, has tested positive for COVID-19. A royal source says he will have to skip the Jubilee weekend celebrations. Andrew has not seen his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, since testing positive on Thursday. He was expected to join his family on Friday for a Thanksgiving service for the Queen, who has celebrated 70 years on the throne. The 96-year-old Queen pulled out from the service after experiencing discomfort on the first day of festivities. Today marks exactly 100 days since Russia began its deadly invasion of Ukraine. Over 7,000 casualties have been reported, but still no signs of stopping from Moscow. CNN's John Lawrence reports Ukrainians are seeking comfort from the U.S. and NATO.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in an address Thursday, thanked the U.S. for sending high-mobility artillery rocket systems to his country, saying they will, quote, help save the lives of our people and protect our land.
President Biden's goal, the whole U.S. government's goal, Congress's goal is to support Ukraine and help Ukraine ultimately prevail.
In addition to weaponry, the Biden administration also announced another round of sanctions against government officials and others close to Russian President Vladimir Putin.
The cumulative toll of every measure we have put in place has been extraordinarily biting on the Russian economy.
The White House released a statement saying these sanctions are designed to, quote, enhance enforcement and increase pressure on Putin and his enablers.
Our goal in all of this is to do everything we can to bring this war to an end, to diminish the violence and to put an end to a conflict that was needless to begin with.
Since the start of the war, President Biden has been talking with other world leaders to develop a coordinated response.
The United States is leading the efforts to provide support to Ukraine. And NATO allies and the United States are providing an unprecedented level of military support. This is making a difference on the battlefield every day.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
Ukraine says a decision may come out soon about its request to join the European Union. Back here at home, consumers are feeling the pinch of the crisis in Eastern Europe, with prices of bread and canned food seen to rise in the country. Melissa Lopez brings us the meat of this story.
Before, it was French fries facing short supply. Now, even bread products are under threat with the rising cost of ingredients. Authorities say supply of raw materials like flour, sugar, and vegetable oil is low and comes with a price because the conflict between Russia and Ukraine disrupts global trade. The Agriculture Department says 16 countries have stopped selling goods to Manila for their own consumption. Bakeries feel the pinch.
Sakit sa ulo yan kasi
Kahit gusto namin itaas ang presyo ng pandesal at tinapay, hindi pwede. Imbes sa 10 bilhin ng pamilya, bakit 5 na lang bibili ng isang pamilya na tinapay? Kawawa naman. Pareho din, babaksak din ang benta namin.
Kinain na ni pandemya ang kaunting naipon namin. Pagkatapos ngayon, kung hindi kami mauunawaan sa pagpapalit ng price tag ng aming mga produktong binebenta, mahirap-hirap ito sa industriya ng aming pagtitinapay.
Trade Secretary Mon Lopez says the country has flour good for 3 months, but prices are rising. A popular cafe has already announced it will not sell its popular Mary Grace Ensaymada by the bulk, while this community burger chain says it's running low on beef patties. So far, DTI counts 3 food companies, including canned meat producers, that have applied for a price hike to cover the high cost. Lopez says it may be approved in a month. As for bread loaves, grocery shelves remain full. But Supermarkets Association President Stephen Kua says prices are bound to keep going up.
Ang household sugar in the supermarket shelves about 10 to 15%. Ang laki nun. Everybody needs sugar, right?
Kua says canned items like meatloaf have increased in previous months too. The Agriculture Department appeals to countries supplying raw materials to lift the export ban to prevent a global food crisis. Melissa Lopez, CNN Philippines.
100 billion pesos. That's how much damage African swine fever has brought to the economy. Almost 3 years since the outbreak, at least 10 localities are still fighting the virus. Carlin Bonkin reports.
Stop Swill Feeding, a reminder posted on Zamboanga City's Facebook page asking hog raisers not to give food scraps or kitchen waste to pigs. It's one way to stop the spread of the African swine fever that has killed at least 500 hogs in the city.
Kumain po sila ng karne, tapos infected po yung karne. May sobrang pagkain, nilagay dun sa hinugas, and then ipakain po nila sa baboy nila. So one way of transmission po ay yung swill feeding po or yung hinugas.
Last week, the city declared an ASF outbreak affecting 5 barangays. The city's assistant veterinarian is asking airlines to help screen passengers carrying pork products. Just last week, officials disposed of 39 kilos of pork products that did not have shipping permits.
Nagtataka po kami bakit dun sa point of origin nakakalusot itong mga pork products.
As of May 25, 31 barangays in 10 cities and municipalities have active ASF cases. An agriculture official says many new cases are in backyard farms. Some farmers may not be aware their pigs are infected.
Pagka first time na nagkaroon ng off-feeding yung hayop, hindi naman sila nagre-report.
Among the signs of ASF on hogs are high fever, decreased appetite, weakness, red blotchy skin or skin lesions, diarrhea, vomiting, coughing, and difficulty in breathing. Rapid test kits are available in municipalities or cities with active cases. Most regions also have RT-PCR testing. Filipino scientists are working on local-made RT-PCR test kits with DOST. Among them is US-based virologist Homer Pantua. His team also made a working prototype of a mobile laboratory for ASF testing and other animal diseases.
We really have to make our own so we can be self-reliant and self-sufficient.
Currently, a Thailand-made ASF vaccine is being tried in the Philippines. Caroline Bonkin, CNN Philippines.
In other news, teachers who served in this year's elections have repeatedly called on the government to exempt their honoraria and allowances from income tax. Now the bill pushing for the tax exemption is up for President Duterte's signature after the House of Representatives adopted the Senate version. Stanley Gaheta spoke to some teachers on whether they are still willing to serve in future elections.
Grade 10 teacher Romaldo Gamilla has served in 5 elections, being a Department of Education supervisor. And he has enjoyed full honorarium each time.
Itong BIR ay biglang nagpataw ng 20% tax. Na base sa kasaysayan at karanasan, wala namang tax ang election honoraria. Mabigat ang 20% kasi sa dami ng naging trabaho ng BEI at ng mga DESO na sumobra kami sa 24 hours.
Meanwhile, grade 3 teacher Remedios Perez chose not serve in the recent election, saying she prioritized her safety amid the pandemic.
5% before tolerable ba? Maaari, sir, kasi hindi namin masyado yung napansin. Pero yung pagdating ng 20% na tax ngayon, iba. Kasi malaki talaga ang nabawas.
The Finance Department earlier said the proposed tax exemption runs contrary to the principles of train law to make the taxation system more useful and efficient.
We believe ito ay napadala na sa Malacanang for signature. Malaking aluan po ito sa ating mga guro at mga poll workers na nagsilbi noong nakaraang halalan.
Malaking tutulong ito sa mga guro dahil sa mga tinatanggap nilang honoraria at saka mga allowances ay magkakaroon sila ng mas buo na matatanggap.
Some teachers now say they have reservations about serving in future elections. They are also urging outgoing President Rodrigo Duterte to increase the salary of teachers before he leaves office.
Makakabawi siya sa guro na pinangakuan niya ng mataas na sweldo nung unang buwan pa niya ng pag-upo. Pero hindi naman niya kami tinaasan. Dumaan lang sa salary grade, salary standardization law.
But the Education Department says there are substitutes should teachers decline to serve in the next election.
So, kung wala naman pong guro magpo-volunteer, marami po tayong pwede pang humalili ayon sa batas. Pwede po ang mga private school teachers, pwede po ang mga government employees.
Stanley Gaete, CNN Philippines.
Straight ahead, King James proves yet again that he's not just a king on the hard court. Plus, some of OPM's hottest artists are coming together on one stage. Stay tuned to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Nueva Vizcaya is more than a namesake of a Spanish province. It takes pride in its own cultural identity. This is evident in its rattan handicrafts.
Mula pa noong 1990s, kilala na ang Santa Fe sa pinakamagaling gumawa ng rattan handicraft sa buong Region 2.
If you're not afraid of heights, you can discover more of Nueva Vizcaya up in the clouds.
You don't have to travel the world. You don't have to go so far to have a different experience, a bucket list experience. Come, touch the skies in Nueva Vizcaya and experience something different that you can hold on for a lifetime.
Satisfy your sweet tooth with Nueva Vizcaya's tasty dessert, Dagway Jam.
Pinansis namin siya as one way of providing income for the community, at the same time providing employment for our women in the community.
Another piece of Nueva Vizcaya you can take home with you are the Munchie mushroom chips.
Masasabi po namin na all natural ang pagproseso namin dito sa aming mushroom farm. Wala po kaming hinahalo na pestisidyo o kahit na ano pa man na magiging threat sa kalusugan ng mga tao. Malaking tulong po ang pagkakaroon ng magagandang kalsada para sa negosyante na katulad namin. Dahil napapaikli nito ang oras at distansya per rehiyon. Kapag po nagde-deliver kami sa ibang lugar, nagiging safe po ang pagde-deliver namin.
With its delicious treats, craftsmanship, and adventure spots, Nueva Vizcaya is more than just a transit place. It's worth calling an exhilarating destination.
Welcome back to Newsnight. Basketball superstar LeBron James adds another milestone to his list of accomplishments. He is reportedly the first current NBA player to become a billionaire. Forbes reports the 37-year-old Los Angeles Laker now has a net worth of $1 billion and is the league's highest paid active player. Now, before him, Michael Jordan was the only other NBA athlete to hit 10 figures, but the man called the GOAT became a billionaire after retiring. And in the NBA Finals, the Boston Celtics took Game 1, crushing the Golden State Warriors 120-108. The Celtics were trailing at the end of the third quarter, 92-80, but they turned the tables with a 17-0 burst. Find out if Boston can keep their lead with Game 2 on Monday, 8 a.m. Philippine time. Now, despite the loss, some Warriors came home with wins of their own. Steph Curry broke the NBA Finals record for most threes in a quarter, shooting 6 in the first. And Klay Thompson surpassed LeBron James in trays made during the playoffs with 433. Thompson is now second in the list, next to Curry. Here at home, some of your OPM favorites are going back to live music and sharing one stage. Rico Blanco, Eb Dancel, and other artists under Balcony Entertainment are performing at the Music Museum in San Juan City on June 11th. Record label CEO Blanco spoke to CNN Philippines New Day about what will set this apart from your regular concert.
It's not your usual 1 hour, 2 hour concert. We actually want all the artists to really share their music because their fans have been waiting for this for such a long time. We'll start at 7 p.m. We'll end around midnight. So it's 5 hours of music. It's not, those concerts where one artist gets to play 1 or 2 songs.
Tickets are on sale with prices starting at 800 up to 3,500 pesos. Now, 2 days from now, 1 out of 36 stunning Filipinas will be chosen to wear the Miss World Philippines crown. The coronation is on June 5 at the Mall of Asia Arena in Pasay City. Titles for Miss Supranational Philippines, Miss Eco Philippines, and Reina Hispano-Americana Filipinas are also up for grabs. Watch that here on CNN Philippines, airing at 9 p.m. this Sunday. And that is it for now. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by
BYKB Radio Ronda.
People are definitely getting excited to go out this summer due to lowered COVID-19 restrictions. And this includes people in their golden years who have been cooped up for a long time due to stay-at-home orders. If you fall under this age group, you should watch out for strenuous activities that could potentially injure you or fracture your bones. Today on the program, we'll talk about bone fractures and how to keep your bones healthy from injury. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Our guests are here today to talk about preventing falls and related fractures. With us is Dr. Carmelo Braganza. He's an orthopedic surgeon at the De Los Santos Medical Center and St. Luke's Global City. Also with us is Dr. Krisha May Borromeo. She's a geriatrician from the Philippine College of Geriatric Medicine. Let's take a look at how important the skeleton or the skeletal system is to the body's central framework. Dr. Bragi, I'll start with you. How does this bones of ours, this skeleton of ours, give the body that ability to stand, to move, to be able to be mobile?
The skeletal system is the framework of the body. It provides attachment for our muscles and the ligaments, and it protects the vital structures like our brain and our heart and our lungs.
When it comes to aging bones or aging skeletal system, Dr. Krisha, can you talk something about that? At what age does our skeletal system change?
As one ages, our bone mass naturally ages as well, and it decreases. So for example, at age 50, women have a 50% to have fractures, and while men, on the other hand, at 50 years old, only have a lifetime risk of 20% to have fractures. So bone loss accelerates at age 50 for women. For men naman, it accelerates at age 65. Pero this acceleration continues throughout one's life.
Dr. Bragi, when it comes to that point in someone's life when they're 50 years old, what physiologically changes when it comes to the strength of our bones?
Become weaker at a particular age, 50 for the females, 65 for the males. But there are ways by which you can actually prevent the progression of this disease called osteoporosis, having brittle bones or a less dense bone. So things that can contribute to it are your estrogen deficiency for those who are menopausal. That's why it's more common in the females. Poor calcium intake and an inactive lifestyle.
Dr. Krisha, when it comes to that certain age, 50 years old and beyond, does that mean na kailangan mag-slow down ng isang tao if they were previously active?
Not necessarily, Freddie, So, ang ibig sabihin lang naman ng when you're exercising at a certain age, let's say at 50, 60, 70s even, or 80s, I've seen some people who are walking around the malls at 90-year-old only with a cane, So, those things or those activities are still very doable for as long as you are more prone to the trauma of aging and for simple falls because of osteoporosis. A simple fall may lead to a fracture if your bones are exceptionally brittle at that point. You just need to be more careful. So really, you do have to talk to your primary care physician or your doctor to check if your bones are at risk.
Dr. Bragi, let's talk about fractures of the bone. What are the more common ones? What should our viewers know?
The more common fractures are the ones that come from your trauma, from a fall or an accident. You may also get other types of fractures which are from overuse, those who exercise too much or move around too much with a poor diet. These are the stress fractures. You can get them in the feet. You also have your osteoporotic fractures, which are from the less dense bone.
Is there something significant where someone would know that they have a bone fracture as opposed, let's say, to a sprain?
It can be difficult sometimes to differentiate the two. That's why when in doubt or once you have an injury, like in an ankle sprain case, it's best that you just get x-rays to have it checked.
Dr. Krisha, when it comes to these risks at a certain age, is there any way to prevent this? What are some of the key factors that makes, like what you said, a 90-year-old being able to still walk around even with a cane as opposed to someone who's 55, who's barely able to be mobile?
For example, if you're a parent or you have a history that your mom or your dad had a fractured hip, or if you're currently smoking, if you've been taking steroids, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, or if you have a secondary osteoporosis, even as simple as a malabsorption, yung hindi ka maka-absorb proteins and other food properly in your gut can cause malnutrition, especially yung mga tao na may chronic liver disease.
Will everyone at a certain age get osteoporosis? Is this inevitable?
So the osteoporosis as you grow older is not inevitable. So you usually gain our peak bone mass kasi in our third decade, sa mga 20-year-old, 20 to 30s, ganyan. That's where we usually achieve our peak bone mass. So kung ano man yung dinala mo at that age, yun na yung kinakarga or yun na yung puhunan mo for the rest of your life. It's not mean to say that if you do not exercise at your 20s or your 30s, you are doomed to have osteoporosis. There are multiple factors that contribute to having weak or brittle bones. Very simple signs lang to know that maybe you might have had a fracture before is if, for example, people might shrink maybe a couple centimeters or an inch from their usual height, maybe kasi may compression fracture na yung vertebra, yung spine nila. That might be a subtle clue or indication for you to seek professional help.
A common question is this a lifetime condition? If I was diagnosed with osteoporosis, is that pretty much it for the rest of my life? Can this be treated? Can this be reversed?
Prevention is always important. So reaching that peak bone mass by your third decade of life is very important. But ways to counteract or treat osteoporosis is actually simple activity, a good diet, and calcium supplementation. In some instances that the osteoporosis is severe, then you can consider medication for that.
Coming up, we'll discuss the potential causes for the common bone fractures at a certain age and their complications. Only here on MedTalk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk, where caring is our calling. Another important part of our skeletal system is our joints, and they're made up of cartilage. They help connect your bones together, which helps in a person's movement. And as we grow older, though, the cartilage in our joints go through some wear and tear, causing the bones to painfully grind on each other. This condition is called osteoarthritis. Dr. Bragi, how common is osteoarthritis among older individuals, and how do we know if we have it?
It's very common, Freddie. You can see it a lot in our older patients who have deformities in their knee. The way they walk, sometimes they limp. So it's very evident, and it's one of the most common complaints that we have in our elderly patients. So one thing that can really help them is actually your exercise and increased activity levels, because when we activate the muscles around the joints, especially the knee joint, it can help prevent the discomfort they feel.
What are some of the factors that contribute to someone developing osteoarthritis? Is this preventable? Is this mostly genetic?
Porosis is the porosity or the density of the bones. Yung arthritis naman, joints yan sa kasukasuan. So pag pinag-uusapan na po natin yung kasukasuan or yung joints, the risk factors are age, like the osteoporosis. Age, usually exponential increase na to at 50 years of age and older. So middle-aged adults kasi they're equally affected. After 55-year-old, we see more women in the clinics complaining of masakit yung balakang, masakit yung tuhod nila, ganyan. Aside from age, obesity, yung pagkataba ng isang tao, yung pagkalaki ng isang tao, talagang nakakadagdag ng strain. Aside from the pro-inflammatory markers ng obesity by itself can add to the problem of osteoarthritis. Genetic susceptibility is also one reason. Parang people are looking into genetic susceptibility, that if your parents had osteoarthritis, are you prone to as well? So may genes po yan. It can be an inherited thing. And certain occupations, for example, are farmers, for example, are construction workers na akyat baba ng tuhod nila, akyat baba ng bewang nila. Yan, yung mga pro athletes who run miles and miles. Ayan po. So, yung mga certain conditions or certain activities that we do or occupation that we do can predispose one to osteoarthritis.
Now, Dr. Bragi, for people who are diagnosed with osteoarthritis, are they also more prone to bone fractures as those with osteoporosis? How does this happen?
With osteoarthritis, this particular type of arthritis, it has some thickening of your bone in certain portions. So you're not actually prone to fractures because of the osteoarthritis, but I would say it's a risk factor because if you have pain in a particular joint, the thing that can happen is you have pain and you can get into an accident. You can trip, or since you're avoiding weight on that affected extremity, you can lose your balance and fall. So makes you more prone to falling.
At a certain age, with average activity level, not doing anything risky, what is the most common injuries in terms of fractures do we see in the older population?
So hip fractures, they're the ones who usually land in our ERs. Sila po yung nadadala sa ER kasi nadala si Lola, nag-slide po siya sa CR. Hip fractures account for a lot of the ER consults in the elderly. Sometimes kasi yung mga compression fractures ng vertebra, konting nag-shrink po lang kayo or medyo kumuba. Medyo silent compression fracture na po yun. Pero hip fractures, it's undoubtedly kasi hindi ka makalakad eh. Usually hip fractures, some people do have compression fractures of the spine, especially yung older people. Sometimes for fragility fractures or fractures na normally hindi mo dapat aasahan na magka-fracture, nahulog lang siya from a standing height, from a sitting height, from a lying down position. Tapos, bakit na-fracture na? Sabihin, clue yun, may osteoporosis ka na, bakit dapat hindi ka magkakabali ng buto na balian ka? So yung mga ganun po, fragility fractures are very, very important kasi that's a sign na may severe osteoporosis na po kayo.
Dr. Bragi, let's talk about that. Kapag na-fracture ang hip, what is the treatment option based on this?
It's a misnomer that you say it's a hip fracture, right? But it's actually that proximal end of the thigh bone which is broken. So the treatment will actually depend on the area of the fracture, if the patient will need a hip replacement, which we mostly do, or if it's amenable to a repair or fixing the fracture with plate and screws or a nail. So those are the treatment options for it. Now, if it's not too displaced, because that is possible to get a fracture in the hip that's not displaced, and sometimes maybe we don't even have to proceed with surgery. But I cannot overemphasize some of the things that Dr. Krisha said a while ago regarding the complications associated with a hip fracture, because those are the things that can lead to increased morbidity and actually death. No? So you can get your bed sores, pneumonia. Our patients have altered sleep-wake cycles. They have lack of appetite, even depression. So that's why we want to address these hip fractures as soon as possible.
Dr. Bragi, what's the most important factor here in determining whether this patient with a hip fracture is eligible for surgery or not?
Yeah, as much as possible, your patient should be medically fit to undergo a procedure, right? So either way, if your patient proceeds with surgery or does not, then at least have some exercise for them while they are lying down. Because the reason you want to do the surgery for your patient is so they can be mobile and try to do the things that they used to do, even if it's just simply going around in the house. Because you have different patients, right, that they just stay in their house. You have your community ambulators. You even have patients who do marathons and run. So what we want to do with the surgery is actually bring them back to their pre-morbid level.
We'll discuss how to prevent injuries to your bones and how to keep them strong and healthy after a short break. Your care is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. We'll be right back. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk, your partner in healthcare. Now, let's discuss how to avoid bone injuries, especially those caused by falls. At what point should an older person consider using a cane to avoid falling? I'll ask this to Dr. Bragi.
You should consider using these walking assistive devices if they do have severe pain in their hip or their knee or even in their spine. These can all help. As long as your patient is having discomfort, then it is recommended that they use these walking assistive devices.
Is it practical if you have someone in the house who is geriatric age, senior age, to retrofit the house to be more accommodating to their needs and maybe to help prevent fractures?
So you have to look around and see ano bang pwedeng environmental factors, changes that we can do to prevent falls. So number one, you can see kung meron pong mga nakakalat, carpets. Maybe there are mga wires na nakakalat lang, pwedeng mahulog or matapilok yung pasyente or yung matanda natin. Yung mga pang-akyat po ng hakbang ng kailangan ba niyang humakbang para makapasok po sa isang kwarto. Meron pong ramp ang harapan ng ating gate para hindi na kailangan umakyat or umakyat matataas na hagdanan. May railing, may banister ba? Especially sa CR, ang dami na po nating mga narinig na horror stories na okay, this day, pero dahil nadulas sa CR kanina, meron po tayong mga fractures na nai-incur.
Dr. Bragi, do you have any tips for us on how to prevent bone injuries in general?
One thing that can really help is actually just simple exercise, some simple exercises that can strengthen the legs and help maintain these patients' balance. So having all those railings around are actually very important as well, because as long as there's support in the house, then we lessen the chances of our elderly patients slipping or falling.
Let's talk about the mental state of those who are growing older. Are those who are older, senior citizen, are they more prone to depression for that matter because of their lack of mobility for one? Maybe because of a fracture or just maybe because of osteoarthritis?
It really affects someone. Na-isolate ka nga lang, we've heard so many healthcare workers na na-isolate nga sila sa bahay for 2 weeks because of COVID. Diba, minsan may depression, meron na po tayong mga ill feelings na kailangan po tayong makausap ng isang counselor. So in the same way that someone with a fracture that immobilizes them can really affect their mental health. Aside from the fact na if you're under chronic pain, sabihin natin the moment that you wake up, you're in pain, till the time that you're sleeping, you're in pain, sinong hindi malulungkot doon? So, yung mga ganyan pong factors, yung pain, social support, mobility, rehab, early referral to a therapist or to rehab medicine para we can give them hope, or at least, the very least, we can modify their surroundings to make them more mobile and more independent. That's really the best.
Dr. Bragi, are there lifestyle changes with a person who is in their 20s and even 30s, as early as that? What can they do at that age to improve the state of their skeletal system when they become older?
We want to ensure that we do have good nutrition, eating a well-balanced diet, getting adequate sunlight exposure for our proper bone metabolism. And in that same manner, you get adequate recovery and rest. Don't stay up too late. Don't smoke. Those are the things that can actually affect our bone metabolism in the long run.
Dr. Krisha, do you have any advice for our viewers, especially when it comes to aging?
So age, really, it doesn't really mean na once you hit a certain age, dahil senior citizen ka na, dahil may mga apo ka na, may grand apo ka na nga, doesn't mean that you have to stop moving. That doesn't mean that you have to stop exercising or eating well. No, you live your life. Who don't make age an excuse. Maximize the best days and years of the sunset years of their life, no? So don't look at yourself na, okay, ganito na ako, hanggang ganito na lang ako forever. Really, the sky's the limit for you, no matter at what age you are.
And Dr. Bragi, any advice for the viewers?
My advice is just keep as active as possible, no matter what age. You can modify activity. You don't have to be running outside. You can use a treadmill. If you used to run and your knees hurt, then you can ride a bicycle. So there's always some level of activity that can be done.
Thank you very much, orthopedic surgeon Dr. Carmelo Braganza and geriatrician Dr. Krisha May Borromeo, for being with us today and sharing your very insightful insights as well as your expertise on the topic. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching MedTalk Health Talk. We'll see you again next time.
DYKB Radio. Ronda.